For decades, concerned local residents have been organizing to move San Antonio off of fossil fuels, responsible for destabilizing the global climate and increasingly violent weather. That work frequently puts us at odds with the leadership at CPS Energy and our elected leaders. In recent months, that tension has led to a fracture in the relationship, the difficult, long-standing relationship between the climate justice community and CPS Energy, as well as Mayor Ron Nirenberg. For many years, the center of this debate has been the 1,300 megawatt JK Spruce coal plant. Though it's been a critical conversation because that plant constitutes nearly half of all of our climate pollution as a city. It's been critical because the overwhelming message of the international scientific community that we move quickly to transition off of fossil fuels to clean energy. It's been critical because we know that this is not as simple as powering down a coal plant. We know, and we've been telling CPS Energy for years, that we have an obligation in this transition to make sure that the lights stay on, make sure that the rates remain affordable, especially for those who are most vulnerable, both to this, increasingly violent weather, as well as any, potential price shocks from poorly executed climate plans. We know that powering down requires a plan to move hundreds of workers from the coal plant to better jobs in the clean energy sector. All of this takes planning. It's hard work. In spite of this, the leadership at CPS Energy has refused for years to open their books and have an honest conversation about how we're going to thread this needle together as a city.
There's two events. We had the Spruce event to build Spruce 2, a new coal plant, the last coal plant to be built. The community fought hard on that and had lost in court, but got agreements to really clean up the existing plants that we had. Cleaning up the Dirty Dilly coal plant, cleaning up Spruce 1, but they never came through with any of the agreements that they made to the community.
The community also pushed back hard on CPS's energy proposal over a decade ago. Again, this is 2007, 8, 9, to double the size of the South Texas nuclear project. And here again, they argued that, that the energy was needed. We found out later it was not. Two, that it was going to be affordable. That early estimates were for about $6 billion for these two new units. By the time this was over, that price tag had tripled, and it took a whistleblower and a lawsuit to get us out of that deal while CPS lost the community over $600 million in the process.
They know and lie about the cost of the nuke. When they originally told us it was going to cost like $6.8 billion, then $9 billion, then $13 billion, and then right as we are putting out the bonds the day before, an NRC insider comes out and says, CPS knows this is going to be $19 billion. Paula Gold Williams was the CFO of CPS Energy, the highest ranking official, right under Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer.
2017 rolls around, and Donald Trump announces he's beginning to pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Well, communities like San Antonio around the country, counties, sovereign tribes, churches, big businesses are all saying, hey, we're still in this. We're still going to fulfill our obligation to the rest of the world and work together to avert climate crisis. As this declaration is being announced, CPS Energy steps forward, surprising most of those in attendance with this generous offer to underwrite the entire climate planning process. And they stay pretty, removed from the process. They don't have anybody at the table. They have somebody in the wings if there are questions. But one thing they don't do is the one thing that we ask them to do over and over again, including those of us on the steering committee, members of the Buildings and Energy Committee, and that is provide data about the coal plant. Here's what that frustration looked like at one meeting.
It strikes me as odd that in this conversation where we've gone through this detailed process to get a greenhouse gas inventory that is scientific in nature, there's no transparency or review of that data, which would take place in a normal scientific process. And so it's fine if you guys want to say, look, the process is cut off, we're not moving forward. But for the steering committee to be able to have access to that data and at least understand, okay, what did we get in this inventory and what did we not get? And what is the actual number that's associated with something, not just the percentage.
If people ask for something and they don't get it because you guys don't want to spend a lot of time on it, that we're going to keep having these conversations. And we're going to be wasting our time having these conversations instead of you guys wasting your time answering questions.
So here's Paula Gold Williams writing to the Sustainability Office in April, a letter that the steering committee would not receive until August, when it was too late to really do anything about, rejecting this idea that there would be a committee to help CPS Energy reduce their emissions. Rejecting this language of eliminating fossil fuels in favor of a reduction in carbon. And rejecting a call for switching from gas to electric in existing buildings, rushing to the defense of the restaurant and culinary community. Needless to say, all of these recommendations are adopted, are in the second version before we know what hit us. So clearly the interests of CPS Energy, of CPS's CEO, Paula Gold Williams, were centered in this work from the beginning. Even the Express News editorial board picks up on this and says, I wonder why we're not talking about coal in our climate plan. Citing that April letter, they say, oh, well, clearly, here's the issue. They've been fighting this plan the whole time. In a document that talks about buildings and transportation and landfills as the primary sources of emissions, even the CPS Energy Board of Trustees get confused. And with a remarkable back and forth at one board meeting with board members saying, well, we can't do anything about this. Why are you showing us this plan? We're already at zero. This doesn't have anything to do with us. It's about buildings and cars. So now you kind of have this amazing situation where CPS Energy's leadership has done such a good job of hiding themselves, obscuring themselves within the climate plan, that they're forced to turn around and try to convince their own board that they exist within this this world of emissions, and that those emissions are actually pretty significant. So here's the kind of not very helpful data seeming material that's shared at the CPS Board of Trustees. We see number one right off the bat. Let's talk about San Antonio and Austin. This purport to show average monthly bill in San Antonio and Austin. Number one, in Austin, they have a progressive rate structure. If you keep your energy use under 500 kilowatt hours in a month, you're paying roughly 3 cents per kilowatt hour, as opposed to San Antonio's 7. If you keep it under 1,000, that 500 to 1,000 tranche there, you're paying about 6. So no contest. Next, we see Paula talking about this tripling of conservation spending, $7 more on an average bill. One, I don't know anybody advocating a tripling of conservation spending, but I certainly don't see a dialogue about, hey, what if we doubled our conservation spending? And what if we partnered with the city of San Antonio in jobs creations related to weatherization of homes? What if that doubling of conservation spending also kept 10,000 more people in their homes, able to keep up with their bills? What's the value of that? And then we see this plus accelerating coal unit retirement. So we're going to see another $12 on our average monthly bill because of accelerating coal unit retirements. Before this should ever be reported, we really need to know, is Paula talking about retiring both spruce units in 2021, 22, one unit in 21, one in 25, both in 25? There are major economic differences between retiring 2 units in 1 year or 1 in 5 years or 2 in 10 years. This is the sort of information that really matters.